All right. So hola, my name is Dyana Weissman. I am the senior custom designer at Type Network. I've been drawing fonts for 16 years, getting my start at the Font Bureau in Boston. My focus is on custom designs, which I make for publications, car companies, media networks, and so on. As you can see, I love elote, and I just wanted to say how sad I am that I could not be there with you in person today, and I hope to visit soon. So today I'm going to split the presentation into two parts. First, the projects I've worked on over the years, and second, the process of making a typeface. To start, I'll take you through some projects I've worked on throughout my life, starting from my very first typeface. So this is Pinstripe. Right before my senior year at the Rhode Island School of Design, I was taking a summer intensive course in typeface design. The course was 2 weeks long and met every day for 8 hours. And during that time, I was also working as a hall monitor for visiting high school students, which meant staying up until 5 a.m. to make sure that the teenagers didn't leave the dorm. And so in addition to that, I had a second job delivering media equipment. And so for those 2 weeks, I got no sleep whatsoever. But even so, I was so incredibly energized by what I was learning that I fell in love with typeface design. And it gave me this feeling of satisfaction that I hadn't felt in a long time. So the problem solving that typeface design requires brought out new life in me. Now, lots of students and designers like to play with the fact that the Latin alphabet is based on strong verticals, known as stems. And many newcomers try to invert this with reverse stress designs. But my idea was a font that was nothing but verticals, using thin white spaces to denote those lines. While it sounds gimmicky at first, it actually made for some interesting design challenges. And these are a few of my favorite solutions, among them the unconventional ampersand, the rotational ash, and the lobster yen. One style wasn't enough, so I tried a few more. Inline, bold, black. There's also a version where the stems are skewed vertically to add a little flavor, and an oblique. Now, an oblique differs from a true italic in that it is merely skewing the glyphs and not doing a whole lot else to improve them or adjust them otherwise. Now, before I move on, there's something I want you all to consider, just in case you have any interest in becoming a typeface designer. Almost everyone starts off with fonts that they feel embarrassed by later. So this is Zombie by Christian Schwartz, who went on to win the Prix Charles Pignon Award, which is the Association Tipographique Internationale's award, which goes to an influential designer under the age of 35. And this is Dolores by Tobias Ford Jones for Font Shop, and he's gone on to win the Gerrit Noordzijk Prize, given out by the Royal Academy of Art in The Hague, the Netherlands. So my point is, don't be afraid to start with a simple idea that doesn't have a broad use. Focus on learning how it's done, and your next one will be better. In my experience, the biggest hindrance to becoming a successful designer, not just a typeface designer, but a designer of any kind, second-guessing yourself and not sharing your work. So just put it out there. After the class ended, I started an internship at Font Bureau. I worked on a revival of this typeface from the Caslon foundry in the late 1800s. Here I learned the basics of typeface design, how to draw a glyph, how to space the letters, and how to kern. These are the other styles, the semi-bold, the bold, the black, and the italic. And after the work I did on this face, I was hired at Font Bureau full-time. So starting small but sweet, this is modified Miller Banner light numerals, particularly the 2 and the 3. This was done for Williams Sonoma. Sometimes a client just needs a small tweak to get a typeface the way they like it. And it's not a significant project, but I really like looking at all this delicious food. This is Traced, a dotted line version of Nobel, done for touch math, and it's used to help teach people to write. This is Baskerville, which I modified for Northeastern University here in Massachusetts, where I am. Back then, they wanted the X height lowered a bit, certain kerning pairs tweaked, and the lowercase I made lighter. This was a fun project for Marie Claire magazine. We started with their typeface. On the top, you see ITC Modern 216, which came in 4 different weights with Romans and italics. And the bold was a total mess. For example, if you look at the lowercase k there, only half of it is actually bold, which is bizarre. And the spacing is uneven. So you can see how far the uppercase G is from the H. When you've got that spacing, you've definitely got that kerning, so there was a lot that I had to fix. Now here's a comparison of the two in context, and you'll notice the modified version on the bottom takes up less space, which is pretty important to magazines. And they were so happy with the outcome, they ordered a display version for each weight, a larger optical size to be used for headlines. Here it is in use. And I regret, I'm really bad at scanning other people. I just focus on the type, and I feel bad because it would be nice to see Amber Riley. This is the YMCA script I did for the firm TBWA Vancouver. This was made back in 2009 when clients were just starting to take advantage of open type technology. I really enjoyed giving the letters texture so that they looked like they were written with chalk or pencil. And it was also an opportunity to make a handwriting font look a little bit more natural. It used to be, in PostScript fonts, this is ages ago, you could only have 256 characters, and that was it. No alternates whatsoever. And if you take the G, for example, it's usually a very expressive character. And if you put 2 G's next to each other, it exposes the fact that it's the font and not handwriting. So for this typeface, we made 3 alternates of every single glyph and wrote a randomizing script that made sure that no 2 identical shapes would show up next to each other. And here is what the alternates look like in the design program. And the real challenge with this typeface, aside from making it look like chalk, was kerning them all to each other. And what happened is that they were all on different baselines, so the shapes really couldn't be put into groups. And so I had to kern everything to everything, and 3 times as much. So a typical high-quality typeface only needs about 3,000 kerning pairs, and this one had 15,000. And you can see it's still in use today. For this project, I helped David Berlow complete a series of fonts with a Palm Pre, a handheld device, which I heard Santiago used to have. The family has 24 styles, 3 widths, 4 weights, Roman and italic. The project needed to cover all European languages, and this was my first time drawing Greek and Cyrillic alphabets. In English and Spanish, we use the Latin alphabet. This is it in use. And I always look at this typeface and I think if I could go back in time, I would make the lowercase Greek omega look less like a butt. So I've gone on to expand several of our typefaces to cover European languages. This is Interstate in Polish for Citibank, which requires specially drawn diacritical characters, even though it's also based in Latin. This is Nobel Greek for Lexus. And Antenna Cyrillic for Ford. After the Palm Pre went off the market, we remastered the typefaces as Après RE. RE stands for Reading Edge, typefaces made to look good on screen at small sizes, 9 to 14 pixels. Others I have worked on include Benton Modern RE, Giza RE, and Rocky RE. Now, to explain optical sizes, here you can really see the differences. The display has a lower X height and very high contrast. The spacing is tighter. When you get to the RE, you see the X height is much higher, and the counterforms, that's the space inside the letters, are very wide, and the spacing is loose. Speaking of Benton Modern display, it's one of my retail typefaces. Now, most of what I do is custom and often proprietary, but these are available for anyone to license. There are 36 styles in 4 widths and 4 weights. As you can see, in the widest width, there are also heavier weights, the black and ultra. We made this decision because as the typeface gets more condensed, it becomes more difficult to read, and we didn't think the styles would look good and therefore be useful to graphic designers in the narrower widths. This is a page from Entertainment Weekly, which used it for several years. Again, I've cropped out Cyndi Lauper. And while it was designed for print, I think it looks pretty good on screen. Here it is on Condé Nast's portal back in 2015. And today on thebatterysf.com. And I just like this picture, it's so pretty. I want to go to wherever that is. Around the turn of the century, Matthew Carter drew his own version of Bodoni for the Washington Post, calling it Postoni. In 2009, together with the team at Font Bureau, I expanded the design space to include higher contrast and slightly more condensed styles. Time magazine commissioned some special characters for their 10th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks. They wanted very large versions of Purvakama, made extremely light and used at 500 points. I suggested a shortened slash that fit with the old style figures. And they were pleased with the characters, so they commissioned a full style as well as an italic. In 2013, I drew italic versions of Matthew Carter's version of Franklin Gothic for the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Now next, I will show you a typeface that I drew for the Waldorf Astoria in New York, based off of lettering on the building's facade. The project called for an alternate set of sands to be compliant with ADA standards, that's the American Disabilities Act. So I ended up reading this manual, it was huge, like hundreds of pages, to be sure it was all approved. For example, we made sure the width of the eye wasn't too thick or too thin so that it would be legible for people who can't see well. This is the full typeface and in use. Now, this is a nice little video done by the folks at Loyal Casper to mold the typeface that we did for Comedy Central. We've done a lot of work together with them for the Sci-Fi Channel, the USA Network, and ESPN. You'll see 2 widths, 4 weights here, and Victoria Rushton added a complimentary set of italics for them. It's not fully released on the website just yet, but you will see it cropping up on the Facebook page and in videos. Another project with Loyal Caspar, geometric sands for CTV in Canada. Here's the regular width in use. You can see how the forms were inspired by the logo. Speaking of inspiration, this is the inspiration for a typeface I'm currently working on. I saw these old bottles in a museum display in Norway, and I don't usually like sans serifs all that much, but this lettering just spoke to me. It's got a lot of character, which unfortunately has to be taken out a bit in order to make a usable typeface. It lends itself well to the new variable font format, which I'm sure you all know about, especially from last year. So this is it in use in Adobe Illustrator, sliding along 2 axes, weight and width. This allows the user to choose whatever they need for a project. Now I'd like to talk a little bit more about what goes into making a typeface. I've chosen a script typeface I'm working on because it has many challenges, which will give you more insight into the kinds of things typeface designers think about when designing a new typeface. Similar to Pinstripe, the first typeface I showed you, I was really hung up on the stems of the Latin alphabet. While doodling in my sketchbook, I wanted to see what it was like to base a font off of this flowing line that you see in the H, the B, and the F. And I really liked the way that the G turned out. And while the lowercase looked decent for the most part, the uppercase was just a total disaster. Like, nobody is going to use that. So while I kept working on projects at the office, I always had it in the back of my head, what can I do for the uppercase? And I was flipping through Jan Chishol's Treasury of Alphabets in a used bookstore, and I saw this page, and I just felt like there was this light shining down on me. Here is your uppercase. The work was by Lucas Mattero, an engraver from the early 17th century. And there was also a set of lowercase characters. So while digitizing the uppercase, I realized I should digitize the lowercase as well. I mean, especially if I really wanted the typeface to look right. So even though my original idea was completely cheesy, it led me to a project that was worth undertaking. Here's how I digitized the letters. I put the image in the background of our typeface design program and traced over it. We use Bezier curves to make the glyphs similar to the ones in Illustrator. Notice how the points are placed. In a face like this, it's easier to make a shape look good by putting the points at the thickest and thinnest parts. It's also recommended to use as few points as possible. Extra points usually just complicate things and make the design look lumpy. And so this is a quick little video. It's a sampling of how Bezier curves work. There are off-curve points, which can be manipulated. We can also move the on-curve points around. And the on-curve points come in 3 forms: straight, corner, and tangent. I was making a little tangent point there for you. Or not tangent, corner. So it's extremely important to space as you draw. Typically, typeface designers start with control characters, the HDO in the uppercase, and as you can see here, NPO in the lowercase. These represent straights, rounds, and a combination of both in one string. This is how we determine spacing of the lowercase, finding the right balance of white space in between the letters, as well as inside of them. And once you've determined the spacing of the control characters, you determine the spacing of each character as you draw it. Typically, we put that character in a string such as this, NN, blank N, O, N, O, blank O, O, or in capitals with H's. This is how we see it between both straights and rounds. And this way, you have the rhythm of the 3 main shape groups: straight to round, and round to round, all the same string. So this is the foundation of a good typeface. Because its letters are an interchangeable set of parts, every letter needs to look good in every possible context. Now, another one of the challenges this typeface presented was an incomplete character set. There was no I, there's no K, a U, or a W in the uppercase, no K in the lowercase, and not to mention none of the numbers or punctuation that a typeface needs. So I searched for the original book that the plates come from, and my French is worse than my Spanish. It's called Les de Lucas Mattero. Now, luckily for me, I live close to Harvard University, which had a copy from 1608, and they don't allow photos, which is why you're getting this thrilling screenshot. But the trick was, while it's important to research your typeface as well as you can, I didn't actually find many more examples to help my typeface, other than a really funky question mark. But I can report that holding a 400-year-old book is amazing. So with no other examples, the best way to complete the typeface would be to mimic Mataros's style. I tried some calligraphy as the closest available option to replicating his copper engravings. It was important for me to get the feeling of the typeface in my hands, like, just get that feeling in my body and put it on paper in order to get the letters to look right on screen. Some designers like to go straight to the computer, but I find those typefaces, sometimes they lack a touch of humanity, and I think this method makes a font more appealing. So here are the capitals in their current state, along with the alternates. You can see I have default versions with tamer tails of the Q and Z, as well as a U with a little bit more flair, and a Y with a lot less flair. And the rest of the character set so far, including alternates. And I don't know if you can see, they're buried in there. There's the crazy question mark that's fallen over, drunk on the champagne. It's also important, while you're making a typeface, to have an intended use. Seeing it in context is a great way to learn about how it will be used and what adjustments you need to make. For instance, the double S in Massachusetts, I'm not sure that I like how that's working. Another thing to consider when making a typeface is the rest of the family. If you're planning on making heavier or lighter versions, the decisions made in those folds may affect how the middle would look. So this was an early, quick extrapolation just to get a general sense of how the family would look together. Another reason this is helpful is it exacerbates the flaws with the typeface. Here you can see the uneven weight, the blobbiness of the V. There has also been the challenge of looking back and forth between an unconnecting script, which is easier to complete, and a connecting script, which typically looks better. The top is an older unconnecting version, and the bottom is the connecting version. The difficulties lie in making what is lettering, which is something meant to be seen in only one specific layout, into a typeface, which, as I mentioned before, is a kit of parts, something that could be used in any setting a graphic designer might create. So here's the same text as a connecting script, but tracked loose, so you can see how the letters look on their own. The challenge of a script like this is designing each glyph to overlap well with the glyphs that precede or succeed it. Ideally, they will also work well on their own at the beginning or end of a word. But sometimes those letters just don't work, so initial or final forms are made. And some connections don't work, in which case contextual ligatures are made. Finally, once everything is done, and there are no more spacing or shape changes to be made, no more characters to draw, that's when I'll begin to kern the typeface, the last piece of the puzzle. When kerning, we'll look at a string of letters, usually similar to the spacing string, and go through every conceivable and usable letter combination. We look at lowercase to lowercase, uppercase to uppercase, uppercase to lowercase, both cases to punctuation, figures to figures, figures to punctuation, accented characters that need exceptions, and other miscellaneous combinations, like miscase names, such as the ones you see here. So as you can see, so much goes into making a typeface. You've seen many different kinds of projects, from minor shape changes to full families. A good typeface designer has to be able to look at the big picture as well as the smallest details. And so I'd like to sum up with a quote from the designer, Charles Eames. The details are not the details, they make the product. It will in the end be these details that give the product its life. And so I ask, what will you give life to? Gracias.